What's poppin', yo? One of the first and OG YouTube online fitness influencers, Connor Murphy, had passed away, and we're finally getting some details into the experiments that he was running on himself that might have set him off and gotten even crazier than when he went through in 2019. So just a brief refresher of what happened to Connor Murphy exactly. The story is here, and it says American man goes on rampage painting luxury rental home worth 22 million baht, which is like hundreds of thousands of dollars. It's like a little bit under $1 million. Then runs into Village Lake and dies. So this is exactly where he lived, because it says his name right here, Connor Michael Murphy, 32, only 32 years old. And this guy was peak like to over 10 years ago. I think he was a college student when he got like that big. And American, about 20 meters. So what happens is they said that there was this guy that was trying to get like a tuk-tuk or something. He was offering the guy, or taxi for people that don't know what that is. It's like a little rickshaw thing that drives people. And they have video footage. I'm not sure if we'll ever get that, but it says reviewing video footage recorded by someone else. A village staff member showed the foreign man suddenly exhibiting erratic behavior without known cause. He ran and swam in the village lake until he became exhausted and submerged before witnesses' eyes. No one dared to enter the water. I mean, it's smart that they didn't enter the water. They probably would have just drowned with him. Like, this guy was actually huge. He was like, what, 6'3"? He was on more gear now than I think he was back then. So this is a 6'3", 200-plus pound guy that's drowning. Yeah, if you go in there, you're going to die. And then divers searched for about 30 minutes before finding him. So they said that he went out, and then he came back, and then the driver didn't even want to drive him because of his behavior. So the driver was getting paid probably well over a day's rate by him to take him. And he's like, nah, I don't want your money. So that just goes to show how he was tripping out. And then I guess the police were coming and he jumped out. So these are a couple of images of what his home looked like. And this thing was chaotic. So in that drowning incident, he was living in Thailand, and he had come to Thailand and was living with, at a period of time before he moved out on his own, with this guy by the name of Tony Huge. Now, Tony Huge, Dr. Tony Huge, he was formerly a lawyer, and then he left the U.S. He founded like some supplement companies, also some alternative gray market companies, and has done very well for himself financially over there. And he was friends with Connor, and he explains the condition that Connor came to him in Thailand after the whole fiasco that happened with Connor Murphy in 2019, which is when he did some ayahuasca and completely lost his mind.
The audience is saying Connor went crazy 5 years ago or something like that, and he never went back to normal after that. And when he showed up in Thailand, he was pretty broken. He had done his fast. He had lost all his muscle. His body was soft and weak. He was emotionally destroyed from a relationship. He was financially completely insolvent. He had no resources. He had a very small amount of savings. He had a very small amount of income still coming in from his previous YouTube and things like that. So I helped rehabilitate him mentally, physically, and spiritually. And that's when you see Connor at his peak. When he got his physique back, he put on a ton of muscle. He had the best physique in his life. Mentally, he was the highest performance level of his life. Spiritually, reaching new levels.
So Connor Murphy showed up to this guy in the worst state, and keep in mind, he was completely broke. This was after he went through and he made a lot of money. Keep in mind, Connor Murphy would even admit that he came into the game of YouTube and understood virality and pranks and all of these things that were going on YouTube at the time, merged it with fitness in order to create a business. He didn't just come in here trying to have fun like Ziz, for instance, who wasn't really a YouTuber. He was kind of like before fitness YouTube in general. He was more of like a forum guy. He was just doing it for the fun, right? For the lulz, as they used to call it back then. But Connor Murphy, he made money from it. So the fact that he went broke is already telling, because a smart guy who built a business and made a lot of money going broke is like, okay, what's going on here? And he would start making money again. This is around the same time that he would start promoting these like supplements, SARMs, for Tony Huge. They would get into business together. It was something, they even had a channel together, I believe, called Natty Plus Protocol. And they said like, hey, am I natural? Am I not natural? Well, it's actually a spectrum. And on this side of the spectrum, you're taking this. So we're selling this thing called Natty Plus. And I'm guessing that's where he was able to start making some money again. And doing a 40-day fast is insane. Like FouseyTube, and this is I keep drawing these parallels between Connor Murphy and Fousey because these guys, the same patterns come out in both of them. Except I don't know about the ayahuasca or the DMT or whatever. And I do think Fousey was definitely a lot less insecure than Connor Murphy. This is coming from Connor Murphy. He says he was insecure and bullied. I don't think Fousey suffered from that. But Fousey did a 30-day live stream fast, not eating anything. I think he took like vitamins and minerals and stuff like that and electrolytes. But Connor Murphy did 40 days and lost all of his muscle, and he gets repaired by this guy, Tony Huge. So Tony Huge sees him after he's battered, broken, and the craziness has worn off, the high of the craziness, I'm guessing. So he builds him back up. And then he starts talking about the first incident that happened in Pattaya. So I don't want to cover the incident totally because there's like images that are graphic, but Connor Murphy lost his mind in a golf, like he was living in a golf course. He was running around his crib with a girlfriend, chasing the girlfriend with a golf club, breaking stuff, and then he gets stabbed and he gets a scar from it. And we would get an explanation of what happened with Tony Huge.
That was actually, it was a result of taking certain things, but it was right after he injected a huge amount of gold that it happened. And then he didn't inject gold for a year and a half or something like that. However long it's been since that incident was. And yeah, I need to say, this is so important. I am not saying that all of Connor's crazy came from gold, but I'm saying recently, I think the majority of the crazy, or what kind of unlocked it, was the gold. Now, if I tell Connor he's crazy, then I play this back in my head and it's such a mind bender. It's so trippy to think about this. But when Connor was acting crazy, I would say, Connor, you're acting crazy. You're going to get in trouble. People are going to think you're crazy, all these type of things. Just maybe act more normal, be more normal, do more normal things. And he would say, it's an act. Like, you underestimate my acting skills. It's all part of the act. I'm practicing my acting. It's all for content. It's all for preparing for some big day when he's going to act these other characters that are like part of his personality. And, when he says that, at first I don't believe him. Every time he says that, I don't believe him. I say, no, I don't think so. I think he's acting a little crazy. But then he would snap out of it and instantly be extremely intelligent. He'd be speaking more intelligently than I do. I used to speak a lot more intelligently when I was working as a full-time lawyer. Now I'm in a country in Asia where people speak less English.
So off rip, the first incident where he completely loses his mind. Before this, we had seen Connor Murphy lose his mind, but never get violent or do anything like to this level of crazy, right? We've seen him claim a bunch of things, but there were gray area. You're like, is this an act or not? The arrest happening, that's not an act. So this was due to him injecting gold. And then we would also get Tony Huge to finally talk about the, quote, superhuman powers. That's something that he mentioned in the first video where he talked about Connor Murphy and said, yeah, I felt like he was discovering these superhuman powers and he discovered this golf swing. Well, what were these superhuman powers?
Connor had superhuman abilities or superpowers. There's a long list of them that he experienced after injecting the gold. And one of them that he just mentioned was the vision and the awareness, and like he could see more. Like most people, they just focus on one thing, but he could see everything all at the same time and in extreme detail. And he would keep talking about this, like his level of awareness and consciousness and his vision and clarity of vision was getting to this next level, to almost like his senses, his sight, his hearing, his touch, everything was amplified. And this made sense to me. I thought, okay, this is possible because
this does not sound like a superhuman power. This sounds like something, sounds like somebody taking Adderall and then you're talking about how they're behaving after that, and that's a superhuman power. It's like, yes, it's impressive. They definitely are operating higher than they would normally. But when we were talking about superhuman powers, like, where's the golf swing? Why was this guy not a professional golfer? All of these other things. So the superhuman powers didn't come into play. And we were to get some new footage from Tony Huge of Connor Murphy's, one of his last interviews that he didn't put out. And you can hear that this guy is clearly off his rocker talking about the singularity.
So the singularity had happened where artificial intelligence became completely autonomous, and it just became infinitely intelligent, like it became God. And basically the Agarthans or the elites or whatnot were going to use me as some sort of transmission tower, like a Tesla tower, because, you know, my colloidal, I was like extra electrical. And they were going to use me to like emanate this electricity and kind of through like some sort of telepathic AI technology, just enlighten like the entire world, like transmit this electrical energy to where it stimulated like every cell in everyone around me's body. And it essentially caused their brain to release DMT. And everyone was going to enter this shared collective psychedelic trip where they downloaded all this information, like infinite information, where they realized, oh my gosh, AI just reached a singularity. No one has to work a day in their life. Everything, like the world just became heaven. And I was fully like convinced of this, right? And I was convinced that basically everyone around me was going to be like enlightened first. So I thought that you weren't like talking about this, but you had already understood this. Like you had already downloaded all of this information. You're like, oh yeah, it's world like singularity day, enlightenment day. Like, yeah, okay, everyone's going to become enlightened. They're going to realize that the universe is like God. It was just one cosmic joke. Now AI is just kind of taking care of everyone's lives. They don't have to do anything they don't want to do anymore. It's just going to be one giant party. And basically throughout the night, everyone was going to be like calling their parents and, oh my gosh, can you believe it? I can't believe, oh, this is so amazing. And basically the world, it was just going to be one worldwide party, like a giant orgy. And so I thought that I was all of a sudden going to like walk outside and they would have this giant like DJ set up for me. I was going to start DJ. Everyone would flood, like everyone, the entire world would come outside and just party. And as this like electrical signal passed through everyone and the entire electromagnetic field of the world would just change. And it was like, boom, the world would be like enlightened in a night and it would be heaven. And I would be like, you know, the prophet, like telling everyone, gotcha guys, like it was this joke, ha ha ha.
You're probably sitting there and thinking, this guy sounds like he's completely off his rocker. Like he's got delusions of grandeur. He's got hallucinations. What the hell is going on here? And this is reminding me of a couple of different experiences I've had with at least 3 people that I know. And they all start talking in a certain way, in a certain manner. And then the question I asked them is like, have you done shrooms recently? And they all say, how'd you know? It's because there's this pattern of the way that they talk in which you know, okay, this person, they've just done this. And then they all feel the same way. And then you just really nod your head. And after about 2 weeks, they kind of go back to normal, unless they completely lose their mind like Connor Murphy in this scenario. The same thing happens with certain friends that never smoke weed. Like for instance, I had one friend, he would very rarely ever touch weed. But when he did, he was more of like a drinking guy. But when he did touch weed, he would just start thinking about random ideas. It's like the Hits Blunt meme. If you guys remember that maybe 10 years ago or so, there was this guy with the drawstrings on the hoodie pulled all the way down. And they were like, oh, Hits Blunt. And then it was a quote tweet meme where people would just quote and say like thoughts or ideas that people have when they get high. So he would get high and he would just come up with like, yo, you know, you should do this. And you just nod your head and you're like, this is an absolutely moronic idea that you would have never come up with if you weren't high. And he never got high. So it made sense. So you start to recognize these patterns. But when you see this guy, you're like, what the hell is going on? And Tony Huge himself, he's quite an open-minded guy, but he even expressed opposition to the gold experiment. But then his open-mindedness is really, it's the devil sometimes, because then he's like, well, you know, like, what do I know? Maybe he knows something I don't. And you start to just allow these things to happen, but he couldn't really do much about it. However, he does question Connor Murphy.
The most powerful people who control the world, who are trying to separate humans from their connection to God.
Well, no, so my theory is, right, and yeah, I thought that, think about it, with like COVID vaccine, they already implemented some sort of like nanotechnology within us that they could turn on at any time and like allow us to download any information that they want, right?
Yeah.
Like that's what I was convinced of, right?
Yeah.
And so, no, I actually think my positive view is that the elites are actually like benevolent, the most powerful elite.
When Connor says that the elites are benevolent, that's the moment I think that he should be locked up in a mental institution. But maybe Connor just hasn't seen what I've seen. Maybe he hasn't read what I've read and experienced what I've experienced. I've got more experience on this earth, and I've got more different, unique experiences than Connor does. And that is not my perspective. And when he says that, I mean, it's kind of funny because he says a lot of other stuff that sounds crazy, but when he says that the elites are benevolent, that's the most insane thing that I've heard compared to my reference base. So it's kind of funny because most people might hear that and think that that's actually the most normal thing he said. And I think that's the most crazy.
Bro, this guy's absolute jokes. He says he said the moment I knew he was crazy was when he said the elites want the best for us. Before that, I could wrap my head around it. But at that moment, I knew he was tripping. Ain't no way the elites care about us. But here's where you see it go crazy. Like, for example, he says, yeah, they put the nano chip in us. Instead of just saying, that thing's new. I don't know if I want to put that in my body. Just like a rational, reasonable take for somebody to have. They always have to turn it into something grand. Like, like there's actually a nano chip and there's like, this thing that stays in your body forever. And then you've got to use this thing to take out this tool to take out the metals that it left inside you because you might end up having a heart attack, all this other stuff. I don't know any, but I'm just consolidating 3 or 4 different conspiracy theories that people have had and bringing them into one. But the problem with Tony Huge here that he has on the one hand is he expresses that, okay, yeah, I realize that he's going crazy right now, but what can he really do? Even in the US, like getting somebody admitted to a psychiatric facility like this, you can't. What are you going to do? And if he pushes back and says, yo, you're crazy, you're tripping, now Connor Murphy's paranoia is going to kick in. He's going to distrust him. And then he's going to push him away and isolate. This is what happens in these. If you've ever dealt with something like this, please tell a story or just say like, this is what happens in the comments. Because these people usually they have 1 or 2 people that they trust, and you want to stay as one of the people that they trust. But to stay as that, you can't just call them crazy, because if you call them crazy, they're going to think you're one of the people that's out to get them or doesn't believe in their experiments. But I'm thinking like, yo, this guy was telling you about superpowers. And then when he says the elites want good for us, that's when you think he's crazy. I mean, it should have ended a lot earlier. And like I said, there are no superpowers. But the way that he's talking about this guy's like, yeah, I'm prophetic, this and that. Unfortunately, you never really think that it's going to lead to somebody harming themselves, because he also saw him dress up and these things kind of blend together. The way that he's talking about it, he sounds like he's just off of a high, right? You don't think this is somebody that's going to do harm to himself. Although you have the previous incident, which is something that you should be concerned about. And Tony Huge explains what he believes happened to Connor that set him off like this.
Psychedelic experience that's happening because of the gold, which is what I think ended up happening in the end, is that he's got the gold in his system at all times because the gold doesn't go out. But then when something else happens that makes him really excited, then it turns into this mania. And in that situation, when we're covered in girls, of course, he's directing all of his energy and attention towards this and us as friends, and nothing crazy happens. But I think in another environment, when he doesn't have friends that are kind of guiding him, like, or keeping him in this reality, and he gets excited about something, then I can see how that is what would have sparked this. Again, I'm not saying that he doesn't use other things, but those other things by themselves never caused him to go crazy like this. I know before I met Connor, that he had some of these crazy episodes, like when it got this bad. There's different levels of crazy, right? So before I met Connor, apparently he hit a level 10 crazy a long time ago. And I don't know all the circumstances about that, but I know some because that's what some of the information that I'm getting from people who were around at that time. So I know it's possible for him to go crazy without the gold because he wasn't ejecting gold back then. But the difference is at that time, he was actually on things at the time. And this time, he wasn't on anything.
This makes sense because a lot of people will say like, yo, he was on a bunch of drugs, and people can get drugs in Thailand, but I'm of the belief that it was just the gold. And one of the experiences that they had where Connor Murphy said it was the greatest experience of his life was when he was high off gold and they were having like some orgy together with God knows how many different chromosomes were involved in that. I don't know, males, females, MTFs, FTMs, whatever other terminology there is to describe the entire gender spectrum. And he said that was the greatest high that he had. And this explanation makes sense with Tony Hughes saying like, yo, this guy, when I guess he's having positive experiences, it's amplified by the gold. And then when the thing is, the gold is poisoning his mind. This guy is suffering from gold poisoning and he's just explaining it away. And he thinks that he's discovered something. And what the hell are you going to do? At this point, you got to like physically like take the gold away from him. You've got to trick him. Really, the best outcome in this is to have tricked the guy to go back home and then somehow gotten him admitted like 5150. That's the best way to have handled this. But how could you handle this? How would you even be able to start doing that? So it's hindsight is 2020. So that's why it's a difficult and sad situation that this guy Tony Hughes has been put in, because now his friend that he helped build up is now dead, unfortunately. I think people will try to come up with conspiracy theories because like this guy Tony Hughes has had several of his friends or people close to him pass away and die in the same city and country as him. But I don't think it's anything nefarious. I do think that the guy seems to have a good heart. He's definitely entertaining, that's for sure. He's got a good heart. He's helping these people. But he's bringing in broken people. Like a lot of these people, they have major issues. And they have major issues, mix that with, I don't know, maybe some substances, mix that with the underworld that they get involved in, as in, like hiring hookers and things of that nature. And that's mental illness. And that is a recipe for disaster where someone can potentially pass away very easily. Like this guy, he drowned. There's nothing much you can look into that. Like, what are you going to say? This guy pushed him into the water. There were witnesses there. Everybody saw it happen. Are you going to say that this guy was encouraging him to do the gold? I don't think that. Are you going to say he was a passive observer? Possibly that's the worst thing you could say about him, but what is he going to do? I do think he was a little bit way too open-minded to it, and he should have been aggressive and like, yo, you can't do that. And then I guess threatened to cut him off. That's the best thing he could have done to absolve himself of anything. But if you cut yourself off and you're a public figure like this with a public relationship, they're going to say, man, you could have helped him, but you left him at his lowest moment and now he's dead. So there's really no winning in this situation. But let me know what you guys think about this in the comments. Like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell if you enjoyed. And I'm going to see you on the next one.